prayers. Let's start with the prayers while I'm still looking for them. All right. And of course, let's generate the right kind of motivation. The armor of bodhicitta. Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. Until I reach enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By accumulating merit and wisdom through generosity and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings never be separated from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment and anger that holds some close and others distant. I pay homage to the Sublime Mother of the victorious ones of the three times, the inexpressible, inconceivable, and indescribable perfection of wisdom, which is unborn, unceasing, and of the nature of space, and which is the object of realization of the self-knowing primordial wisdom. That last verse we recite is said to be from the son of the Buddha, Rahul. Buddha had a son, the Buddha had a son, which some people would say he left his son, he left his wife, but they all benefited, of course, from the Buddha's amazing abilities, and Rahul also became a great practitioner. And I think I remember reading, I think it was the same Rahul who composed this verse as a praise to the perfection of wisdom. Okay, so where did we get to last time? Now, we've already gone through a lot of concepts, a lot of philosophical ideas that Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't explain. And we usually, when we study this text, we've already studied them. So there's no problem if the teacher just briefly explains them and then we move on. But I don't know whether you did study them, so I gave a little bit, or I give a little bit more explanation here. But we've heard about different texts that Acharya Chandrakirti has used as the basis for his text. We've learned about the precious garland. We've learned about praise to the ultimate expanse, different ideas about the path, about the vast aspect of Buddhism. And then lastly, right now we're talking about the compendium of sutra, which unfortunately we don't really read these old texts. We don't read the sutras. We don't read but what's so beautiful about learning this text, studying this text, once you've completed Acharya Chandrakirti's text and you have an understanding of the meaning, then you can go back to these texts and study them. So the goal, of course, is to go back to the sutras, particular the Perfection of Wisdom sutras. Okay, but let's return to the text. Now, last time we went through this passage in which Lama Tsongkhapa explains what is really difficult to do. So it's difficult to have a precious human rebirth. I briefly mentioned the 8 leisures and the 10 opportunities, and then thereafter he says it's very difficult to find faith in the teaching. And again, what does it mean to have faith? Oh, it's going, yes. So what does it mean to have faith? Faith in the teachings? Well, there are two main characteristics that faith should have. It shouldn't be based on reasoning, and it should be provisional. In other words, it should be temporary. To have faith only as long as we haven't understood what we have faith in. The goal is not to become a Buddha and have faith in reincarnation. No, Buddha knows reincarnation. The Buddha has realized reincarnation, has realized everything, knows everything, doesn't need to have faith. And we also talked about faith not being a term we use in everyday life. Here, this is specifically believing faith. Because in everyday life, well, we don't say I have faith in the teacher, or I have faith in science, but actually we do. I mean, we don't check all the food we buy every time, run tests whether it's free of pesticides or not. We have faith that it's fit for consumption. We have faith that the bridge that I'm traveling over is not going to collapse under me. We have faith that the medication the doctor prescribes me is going to help me. I'm not going to run clinical trials or whatever. And in school, I mean, whatever we learned, it's not like we re-experiment with whatever we learned in physics. And so there's so much we take on faith. Even the date of our birth, we take it on faith. We don't know. We take it based on faith, based on reasoning. And so therefore, a lot of the things we think we know, we don't actually know. We just know the facts about it. We've Googled it, whatever. We looked it up, and so we know the facts, but we don't know, we have no first-hand knowledge, which is fine. We can navigate just fine with that kind of faith, but it should be, of course, faith based on reasoning, faith based on experience, in order not to be misled. Okay, so we discussed faith in some detail. And after that, we spoke about, what was the next part? Oh, bodhicitta and great compassion. So Arya Nagarjuna tells us, difficult to have a precious human rebirth, and I would claim we all do. So wow, how precious, how amazing, how lucky we are. The first condition is fulfilled. We have a precious human rebirth. I mean, like if you go through these 18 points, we definitely do. Faith is a different matter. Like, do we really have faith? I mean, we have some faith, but if we had the kind of faith that is required here, the kind of faith in the Dharma, we would be always practicing. We would not waste any time. Okay, and then there's, of course, bodhicitta. And that's difficult, we all know. Why? Because great compassion is so difficult. Bodhicitta, as I mentioned, is the wish to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So the wish to become a Buddha is not even that difficult, because we usually wish for the best. Buddhahood is the best. So we all want to become Buddhas. But for the benefit of all sentient beings, that's different. That is only possible once we have great compassion. And again, great compassion is not that difficult. If you don't have self-centeredness, we don't have that mind. We're so used to it. We're so used to just thinking of ourselves. We were born that way. It's grown stronger. I would say definitely in the modern world, being self-centered, it's very much emphasized. I mean, it's what's the word? Fashionable. It's not just fashionable, it's a necessity. You apply for a job. If you apply for a job, you're not going to say, I'm not going to be humble. You have to present yourself, all your qualities, and not just that. I mean, that's okay, actually. You can be very humble and still present your qualities. There's nothing wrong with that. But constantly thinking about ourselves, feeling lonely. I mean, loneliness is also an expression of like a sense of the separation between myself and others. Seeing myself as being more distant from others. I'm not a part of others, right? Feeling lonely. Like, for instance, if you have a child and your child is happy, would you feel lonely? You wouldn't, right? You'd be happy for that child that they're... But sometimes loneliness expresses itself in like you're in a group of people and everyone is happy and you just aren't, and you feel lonely, you feel left out. But being left out or not is actually a matter of attitude. If you feel so close to everyone, even if they don't feel close to you, it doesn't matter. if they like you, if they really, really like you, usually we like them back. So we're very much dependent on their reaction. But if you love them in the first place, even if they don't like you, doesn't matter. You love them. You know, like parents whose children don't talk to them and they, don't want anything. I mean, unfortunately, it's heartbreaking when I hear these stories. But yeah, especially in the West, there are people who no longer talk to their parents. And I don't know how they feel about it. Some parents may be okay with it, but I'm pretty sure a lot are not. And they still love their child, no matter what happens. So that's the kind of feeling of closeness we try to generate towards all sentient beings. I don't want to use this word healing. It's such a weird word, but it really is, right? It's so comforting. I like what Ben said. Again and again, I come back to what he once said in the group. He just tried it. Just have love for all sentient beings. Never mind how weird it felt. Brush his teeth for the benefit of all sentient beings. And surprise, surprise, it made him feel really good. Right? That's how I understood this message. That was not verbatim, but something like that. He said something like that. So the point is, therefore, this feeling of warmth and compassion towards all sentient beings is so good for us. So good for our mind. So good for our body. As His Holiness says, we think compassion benefits the other person. We think love benefits the other person. But actually it benefits us more than anyone else. Because the other person may not be aware we have love for them. So then I have no idea. I mean, if they know, of course it benefits them as well. But that feeling is so, healthy. And therefore that's why Buddha talked about it. For no other reason. But what stands in the way is self-centeredness. It's that obsession with the I. I mean, it sounds so judgmental. We're all so selfish. No, it's not like that. It's just saying we have this habit. It's just a habit. In and of itself is not good or bad. In and of itself, it's only bad because it gives rise to something we don't want. If we really like to suffer, if we really love to be depressed, if we love to be lonely, if we love to worry, if we love to have mental pain and physical pain, the Buddha would have said, be selfish, enhance your selfishness, because that will give us the suffering we want. But of course, it's the other way around. So the only reason we say it's good, it's because it leads to that which, makes us healthy. So it's just like with food. If broccoli was poisonous for humans, no one would say eat more broccoli or spinach or what have you. But it happens to be really good for our body, so we say it's healthy. And there's certain foods, if cats and dogs eat them, they die. Right? I just found out the other day, my mom had my sister's dog and it ate a plant that's poisonous for the dog. Whoa, what a drama, I didn't even know that. Anyway. So these kind of examples, certain food types, they're bad for us, so we label them as bad. But for other animals or for other living beings, they're really healthy. Now in this case here, just a sec, in this case here, we're not talking about something physical, but the workings are similar. Because they really bring us what we deeply want, therefore, it's labeled positive. Yes?
So when you actually generate a realization of great compassion, you're still not aware of all sentient beings. You don't have that intuitive perception of...
If you generate great compassion, if you're able to generate or attain great compassion.
Like you say, all sentient beings, but you're not aware of all sentient beings.
You mean like all sentient beings, you're not aware of all sentient beings in the sense you're not aware of each and every sentient being. No, that's true. That's true. But it's just a way of saying it. In the end, it's like, without knowing every sentient beings, the moment you know them, they're included in them. So whoever you're aware of, and the ones you're not aware of that you just assume they exist, they're all part of that. So it doesn't matter who comes into the room, it doesn't matter who you meet, they're all part of that. Which fly moves, oh, that one too, and that one too. So all sentient beings doesn't mean you're aware of every individual, every one of them, and have great compassion for them, but rather it doesn't matter who they are. As long as they're a sentient being, you feel the same about them. So it's like you have friends you haven't met yet, kind of thing. Or in a way you have met already, you've forgotten about them. But then in this life you haven't yet. So you feel like everyone is your friend. Everyone is the closest to you ever. So it doesn't matter. Look at His Holiness. I mean, it's just, you need to see His Holiness. The audiences for His Holiness, everyone. Like sometimes we see these audiences, or we're lucky to participate in them, right? And so if the moment you get closer, you can see His Holiness gives the same attention to everyone and just loves everyone there. You feel loved yourself. That's why people like they tear up. It's like this emotion, being so loved by someone who they maybe met for the first time face to face. It's like overwhelming. They've never experienced anything like that. And so His Holiness shows us, like, everyone. I don't think His Holiness would ever be depressed or anything. I mean, it's one of the happiest people on this planet. I'm pretty sure. Simply because of the mind of His Holiness. It's the best thing we can do for our mind. On the other hand, our self-centeredness creates so much problems. But it feels like unless we were self-centered, since no one else is focused on us, no one else cherishes us, we feel like unless I do it, I need to do it. I need to do it because no one else does it. So, but actually, it's the other way around. That's the problem. Yeah. Anyway, so therefore, to want the highest spiritual goal, of course, I'll sign up for all sentient beings. For myself. Yeah, and that's where the problem lies. And that's why great compassion is just really difficult, because of our habits. The good thing is just a habit. We can generate great compassion without even having understood that the kind of self we obsess about doesn't exist. Isn't that funny? It's not saying we're obsessed about a self that does exist, because the self exists. There's a conventional I, but that's not the one we're obsessing about. So not only are we extreme when it comes to obsessing about the I, but the type of I we obsess about doesn't exist. We're a slave to something that doesn't exist. All our time and energy is spent. It's kind of like you're obsessed with the horns of a rabbit, or like the typical Tibetan example or Buddhist example of something that doesn't exist. It's kind of really funny if you think about it. Anyway, can't help it, of course, but the good thing is we can get used to, we can habituate with great compassion. So that is said to be even more difficult to generate. But then Arya Nagarjuna says, so all this is difficult, but what is even more difficult are certain karmic obscurations that we generate. So certain karmic actions, volitional actions, can pose as an incredible obstacle to our practice. And that's something to be aware of, to be really careful about that. And even if we feel pretty safe and we're doing the practices, we're giving our best, we may be accumulating them. So it's nice to be warned of what to be aware of. So the first one is injuring, number one, and harboring disparaging thoughts towards a bodhisattva. Okay. So having emphasized these challenges that we just went through, having a precious human rebirth, having faith, and so forth. Having emphasized these challenges, the Compendium of Sutras explains that it is even more difficult than all this above. And great compassion seems pretty tough to accumulate. But it's even more difficult to overcome certain grave karmic obscurations. These include the negative karma of injuring a bodhisattva or harboring disparaging thoughts towards them. Then secondly, the karma generated by the acts of Mara. What does that mean? And the karma of abandoning the Dharma. So these are three dangers, basically, Arya Nagarjuna warns us of. Regarding the first point, injuring a bodhisattva is far more serious than harming an ordinary being. For bodhisattvas dedicate their entire lives to the welfare of all sentient beings, which means to obstruct them is therefore to obstruct the welfare of countless sentient beings, of all sentient beings, indirectly. I mean, it's a bit like, you know, a doctor who works in a hospital, like in a huge capacity, as in like the lives of his patients are all dependent on this doctor. If you kill the doctor, you indirectly greatly harming. So here it's not about just the patients in a hospital, but it's about all sentient beings. So to obstruct them is therefore to obstruct the welfare of countless beings at once. The karmic obscuration created in this way is exceptionally weighty and exceedingly difficult to purify. Of course, we can purify any negative karma. That's the beauty of it. I mean, when we think of negative karma, what does that even mean? Of course, it's an action, first of all. Karmic action mainly refers to particular volitional actions, but then there's something is left on the mind. So an imprint, or even in the Prasangika school, they say when it's a verbal or a physical action, then something physical is left. All I can come up with is some energy. You know, like our body, of course, consists of energy. We know in the tantric teachings, every mind comes with a certain energy. There's physical energy, of course, and our mind can only interact with our body, which it does. It's incredible, the power of the mind on the body. But how can the mind interact with the body? Through the subtle energy that it's connected with. So the cases of beings like great practitioners meditating, engaging in a lot of practices on love and compassion, and if at that time they have certain diseases, well, there's evidence of them being reduced. I just listened to it for a few minutes, this conference on AI, and there was one Rinpoche who used to be at the IBD, Kangsa Rinpoche, and he gave a talk about Taiwan and about being in Taiwan and being part of this research where people engaged in people who had cancer. And I didn't listen to the whole thing, I asked someone later on, but they said that, yeah, it was all about this research, cancer research, where people did certain practices, certain meditations, and there were different groups, and this group who did the meditation, their cancer cells reduced because of their practices. So how is this possible? Well, because the meditating mind creates an energy, and this energy interacts with the body. You remember also I gave you the example of the nuns project, of these Christian nuns who were socially very active up to a really high age and lived up to, I don't know, they lived into their 90s, which was quite surprising to a lot of scientists. And they were also so fit, they were so sharp. And they therefore asked these nuns, can we, when you pass away, can we examine your brains? And they agreed, and they found that many of them had Alzheimer's. They had the physical symptoms of Alzheimer's, but no symptoms manifested when they were alive. So it's like, wow, the power of the mind. I think that's one of the, because we're all scared of getting, you know, when we get old, to get dementia, to get Alzheimer's, right? I mean, who's not scared of that? And here there's an example that you can actually have that disease. And there was not just one case, there were quite several. I mean, you can read about it online. The nun study, usually if you Google the nun study, it comes up. And there were several cases of nuns having the whatever typical symptoms, physical symptoms of Alzheimer's, but didn't display any symptoms. Isn't that amazing? Just for that, you would want to practice. But the point, what I'm trying to say is here, so anyway, something is left. So here, this was about the subtle energies. But these energies are very much changed by the mind, by the thoughts we have, the actions we perform. And when we say imprints, don't think of them as little dents in golf balls. That's what I used to think. You know, like my mind is like a golf ball. And then with all new imprints, you run out of dent. You know, it's like, you know, golf balls, they have these indentations, right? So it's like a golf ball can only hold that many like indentations, right? So in that sense, like how much fits into your mind, how much, but this is just, it's actually not even imprint in Tibetan. The word imprint is more like, has more the meaning of predisposition, right? The meaning of tendencies or predisposition is probably a better example. So the thing is, every time our mind thinks something, it slightly changes. The mind has slightly changed in the sense of there's now a propensity or a predisposition. A propensity is also another word you could use. Like there's a propensity left in the mind that now has the potential to give rise to a certain experience or to a tendency. Maybe the simplest way to imagine it is, for instance, if you usually don't get angry easily, usually you're not an angry kind of person, it's been months since you were angry for the last time, and you try to control yourself, but one day you're just tired of controlling yourself. You just let yourself be angry and just, boil internally for like an hour. And then every moment you're angry, there's something left on the mind, which means next time a similar situation, a similar trigger arises, you're much more likely to get angry with a similar force. So there's a propensity now in your mind. Something is different due to the anger. So your mind has changed in that sense that there's more of a tendency to get angry, as one example. But there's more than that. There's also everything we experience is coming from karma. I mean, from these actions in the past. So that things manifest in that way. It seems hard, like, like the whole world is kind of acting according to my karma. No, but again, first of all, there's no objective world. It's a subjective experience. I mean, we do talk about an external world, but first of all, there's definitely the subjective experience. That's the sum of the subjective experiences is reality, basically. And so if you think of like people, I mean, sometimes like a plane crash, sometimes people have similar karmas, and of course, all of them die, unfortunately. Their experiences may be individually different. One loses consciousness before everyone else, and another person experiences more vividly. But then you have this case of what is it called, this city? Ahmedabad? Yeah. That just recently, remember? That was this terrible, terrible crash. And there was this guy, like everyone was killed, but this one guy, he literally walked out of the plane with a few, cuts and scratches, and that was it. He basically walked himself to the ambulance, kind of like, who are you? I was on the plane. What? And everyone, even the person next to him had died. So it's like, how's that even possible? And he was in a spot in the plane where ordinarily you die. Certain places where you're less likely to die, in the very back and so forth, next to the toilet. In the back, I sat there before. Interesting smell. But you may survive if there's a crash. He didn't even sit there. He sat in a place where usually you die. So coincidence or, an experience you have because of what happened in the past. Makes kind of more sense, doesn't it? But the point is that we create incredibly dangerous obscurations, especially when it comes to sorry, my mom just called. I wanted to see how many times she called. This is something urgent. She just called once. It's okay. Especially when it comes to like the Dharma. Here it's like obscuring a bodhisattva. So this is injuring them, that makes sense. And then harboring disparaging thoughts towards a bodhisattva means maintaining an abusive or belittling attitude toward them. So this may at first seem less serious than physical harm, just kind of thinking, oh, that annoying guy, woman, whatever. I mean, probably not knowing they're a bodhisattva. I mean, or even if you do and you're still annoyed with them. Though this may seem first less serious than physical harm, it nevertheless gives rise to a particularly heavy karmic obscuration. So it can be a huge obstacle. As explained in the 3rd chapter of Entering the Middle Way, even a single moment of aversion directed at a bodhisattva can destroy or destroys an immeasurable store of virtuous karmic imprints. This is really scary. That aversion and anger, especially directed at a bodhisattva, can destroy so much virtue. But the good news is, you can also do the opposite. If you really rejoice, rejoicing, for instance, such a powerful practice, you can accumulate so much virtue. It's so easy to rejoice, right? Everyone is practicing and you just rejoice. It's incredible, like some of these methods, they're so pleasant. Rejoicing means experiencing joy. So it's not like, oh, torture yourself, I'm rejoicing, I'm really torturing myself. No, it's a really pleasant experience. But rejoicing in something extremely virtuous, such as the activities of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, creates so much virtue in a short period of time. So every now and then you feel depressed, just rejoice a little bit. It's difficult, it depends on the type of depression, and you can't force it, of course, but sometimes it's just because you're bored or, whatever, like minor reasons, and then just to sit down and rejoice in His Holiness the Dalai Lama, in the other lamas, His Holiness the Karmapa, and all these great lamas that are still around, and their activities, how they affect others, their amazing positive effect on others, and every single person's virtue. Isn't that beautiful? So it's a beautiful practice, pretty simple. Don't need a quiet place and a fancy meditation cushion. Can do it anywhere. And so here's the opposite side. Instead of aversion towards bodhisattvas, which can destroy a lot of virtue, well, you can accumulate a lot of virtue. Such resentment here and contempt can also easily give rise to the intention to harm. Again, go back to the injury, while blinding us to the true qualities of that bodhisattva. In turn, this may prevent us from appreciating the virtues of other bodhisattvas or of the Dharma itself, causing us to miss the precious opportunity to receive their guidance and inspiration, as well as the profound benefit of the teachings. Now, of course, we don't know who's a bodhisattva. That's always the danger. That's always the danger. But I don't think if we spent a lot of time with someone, spent more time with them, that is that difficult to miss. It's not like they're like serial killers. I'm not saying we meet serial killers all the time, but it's not like that they're super selfish and horrible and so forth. Usually, I'd think they're pretty pleasant. Of course, they wouldn't say that they're bodhisattvas, but yeah. Anyway, so therefore, it's good to be careful. Definitely important to be careful in our practice, because someone close to us or not that close to us may actually be such a great being. And I remember, I told you this story I think many times, but our previous director at the IBD, Geshe Kelsang, he had a disciple from Ladakh. I think he was from Ladakh or from Zanskar. And he was so super humble, really humble. And because he was so kind and so humble, a lot of people didn't really take him that seriously. They didn't know his education, they didn't know what he was doing. He was just always so friendly. And sometimes when people are so super friendly, no matter what, other people are like, don't really take them that seriously. I myself didn't. I can't really speak for others, but I definitely didn't think he was a great practitioner. He was just this friendly monk. But when he passed away, they realized that he was in the clear light of death. He did that death meditation for many days. So that showed he was a very advanced practitioner. So I was like, oh no. Oh my God, I saw him so many times. Unfortunately, I wasn't rude to him or anything. I was friendly and he was friendly, but I never spent time talking to him. What a missed opportunity. My teacher was up there, and when I was there, I would meet him many times because he lived next to Geshe Kelsang, and I hardly ever talked to him. What a missed opportunity. So again, we don't know. They're not usually the ones influencers. Well, there are influencers, but not the type that we know that want to be famous. Okay, so moreover, when such disparaging thoughts are expressed in speech, they may cause others to lose faith, depriving them too of the chance to receive this guidance and benefit. So if our dislike of a particular person may even convince others to, then, so that's why it's really good to be careful. I mean, it's okay sometimes to express your doubt, but resentment is not like, it doesn't allow doubt. I mean, doubt in the positive way. Like, it's like this person is just 100% bad. So you may have doubts about a person, not knowing, but to at least allow for the possibility. Maybe they're incredible. I don't know. So since we cannot readily discern who is and who is not a bodhisattva, the danger of creating such obscurations is very high, and the harm they cause extends far beyond what might at first appear. So to be always careful. I don't know who's a bodhisattva and who's not. Okay, so that's one thing. It was stressed again and again, mentioned again and again. In the third chapter in particular, it'll be mentioned. And then there's something called the acts of Mara. Usually people package the word in a different way, because Mara is such a weird word. They call it something else. They say like the four evil forces, the acts of the four evil forces, or the acts of, or the four Maras. But they're really important. When we study philosophy, they're really important. They're considered quite important. Now, what the acts of Mara are, we will come to see. But I thought this is a good opportunity to talk about these four Maras that we discussed in some detail. And again, they come up again a lot. You know what? A Mara means kind of evil force, right? And you know the word nightmare actually means a night Mara. That's the origin apparently of the word. Like a night, a Mara, an evil force that comes at night. So it's quite nice how even our language comes or has some basis in some of the Sanskrit terminology, or some people would say there was another language before Sanskrit, but they have the same root. And so words such as nightmare can be traced back to Mara. Okay, so according to the Compendium of Sutras, another grave karmic obscuration regarded as even more difficult to overcome than obtaining a precious human rebirth, developing firm faith in the Dharma, or cultivating great compassion and bodhicitta, is the obscuration produced by the acts of Mara. Although the text does not specify what these acts are, here Lama Tsongkhapa doesn't specify, the context suggests that they involve creating obstacles to the Dharma. For example, obstructing others from engaging in practice, which falls under the coarse form of the Mara of Devaputra, which we'll go through in a moment. Okay, so Mara of Devaputra doesn't mean anything. They're two Sanskrit words. Even worse. Usually I like to use the English. But evil force is weird. An evil force. So Mara is better. And Devaputra, we'll explain that. So Mara here means or denotes that which prevents progress toward liberation or enlightenment. So there's certain things, certain Maras, that are called that because they prevent progress towards enlightenment or liberation. And they're usually four types. Also called the four evil forces, so dushi in Tibetan. You have the Mara of the aggregates, the Mara of the afflictions, the Mara of death, and the Mara of Devaputra. So these four. And each of them has both a coarse and a subtle form. Okay. So the Mara of the aggregates refers to the five aggregates, mind and body. So mind and body are an obstacle to liberation and enlightenment. Having this present mind, having this present body, obviously. I mean, this body, so fragile, right? I want to practice and I get a headache. I want to practice and my knee hurts. I want to practice and I feel tired. So the body. Anyway, so the five aggregates: form, feeling, discrimination or discernment, compositional factors, and consciousness. Okay, so basically mind and body. Within the continuum of sentient beings, so non-Buddhas, mind and body of non-Buddhas. In its coarse form. So the coarse form refers to the aggregates of ordinary beings which arise from contaminated karma and afflictions, and bind them to cyclic existence through an ordinary body and mind. So, our mind and body. Our mind and body. Our mind, it doesn't do what we want it to do. When we don't want to get angry, we get angry. I mean, I don't need to say much about it. I mean, having this mind and body is an obstacle. There's self-centeredness, the main obstacle, misconception. So it's not easy. And a lot of times people ask me, how can we even use this mind and body to become liberated? It's like we have a messy thing. We should have something clean, something good that becomes. How can we use this limited body? But that's like saying, how can you become a yoga master who's so flexible, like who can do the most crazy stuff with this not flexible body? Right? I mean, right now it seems impossible to do the things that some people do, like yoga teachers and so forth. Well, we start with the body that is the opposite of that body. But the good thing is it can become more flexible. Our body can become more flexible, and so can our mind. Yeah, that's the good thing. Our mind is like a muscle. You train it, it changes. You train it a little more, it changes more. You don't use it, you lose it. Right? You don't train it in the right way. It's like use it or lose it. Yeah. All right, so that's this contaminated mind and body, which comes from karma and afflictions. They bind us to cyclic existence. But that's just the coarse form. Bodhisattvas overcome these coarse aggregates upon attaining liberation on the 8th ground. So when you're on the 8th bodhisattva ground, then you overcome this coarse body. Coarse mind, coarse mind anyway, but also coarse body. But this does not mean that practitioners on that stage are without a body. Rather, they possess what is known as a mental body, which looks like an ordinary body. It can look like an ordinary body, but it's called a mental body. It does not arise from contaminated karma and afflictions, but from the imprints of the root ignorance and from uncontaminated karma. Now, this is a really difficult idea, and trust me, people ask about it. I ask my teacher, and usually the answer sooner or later is, I don't know. Right? Because it looks like an ordinary body. And the texts do mention them again and again, but they don't give very clear explanations. This is what it looks like. And basically, those bodhisattvas around us who are not Buddhas yet. So many of the Rinpoches, we can't say. Some of them are Buddhas, some of them are not. So many of them could be on the 8th ground of a bodhisattva, and they have a mental body, but they look like ordinary beings. I mean, no surprise. Look at Buddha Shakyamuni. He seemed pretty ordinary. Became old, wrinkly, I suppose. Well, not on the Tankas. He never looks beyond 20. But of course, it's for, but honestly, of course, eventually, it would have been amazing. I mean, so weird if he hadn't aged. So, again, I use this example many times. We can only relate to someone who's totally beyond us if they manifest in a way similar to us. This is expressed, for instance, when you're a toddler and an adult Nobel physics nominee walks into the room. As a child, we have no idea of who this person is. It's totally beyond our understanding. And so they want to communicate with us. First of all, they're squat. If you talk down to a toddler like that, they're going to freak out. They're going to be really scared. So you go down to their level, right? When we talk to children, we basically want to be on eye level. And so that means you have to squat, basically. And then you don't talk about X plus, I don't even know how to talk like a physicist, you don't talk about physicist stuff. You go like, hello, da-da-dee-dee. You talk to them probably more extremely. They go like, well, why are they talking to me like that? No. But yeah, they talk to them in a way that they understand, right? Yeah, like you don't use complicated sentences. So that's the worldly example of a Buddha moving to our level. If the Buddha manifests with 1,000 arms and we wouldn't be able to see it or freak out. Oh, that's too many heads, too many arms. No, I'm kidding. I mean, we wouldn't even be able to see it. So they manifest with a body we can perceive. And that is called a mental body because it's through the mental power, basically, that they're able to manifest them and not through some crappy afflictions and karma, like in our case, right? Okay, so I don't know whether that's why they're called a mental body, but I suppose that's why. I'm not sure. This body does not arise from contaminated karma and afflictions, but from the imprints. But still they arise from something we want to eventually get rid of, the imprints of the root ignorance and uncontaminated karma. Uncontaminated karma means here the wish to take such a body. It's called uncontaminated karma, but actually it's just the wish. So it's not an affliction. It's not contaminated karma that is actions influenced by our afflictions, by our aversion, our attachment, and so forth, but rather it's the wish motivated by great compassion and so forth in the continuum of a bodhisattva, the wish to take on such a body for the benefit of others. So you have still a contaminated aspect, which is the root, is the imprint of ignorance. There's still some contamination here. However, it's not an affliction as such. It's not such a coarse negative aspect. And there's a very positive motivation or uncontaminated karma that goes along with it. So think of the 12 links, right? If you think of the 12 links, what is number one? The 12 links of dependent arising, the 12 links of cyclic existence. What's the first link? Ignorance. It's an affliction. What's the second link? Karma, contaminated karma. So here, the first link is not ignorance. In this case, if you think of the causes and conditions, the first link is what? The imprints of ignorance. The second link is not contaminated karma, but the uncontaminated karma, the wish driven by great compassion, bodhicitta, and so forth, to take such a rebirth. And then you're reborn. And then what about craving and grasping? No craving and grasping. Great compassion and prayer. Right? So when you die, again, like in the next life, you've already accumulated let's say for instance in this life, if you're a bodhisattva and you're on that really high level, you've already overcome the coarse aggregates. In this lifetime, you've become liberated. You're an 8th ground bodhisattva now. Now you're liberated. Still with your ordinary body, right? You still have the ordinary body that's a result of contaminations and contaminated karma and afflictions. But you've now eliminated these afflictions. The body's still there until you die, until the karma is exhausted for this body to die. The karma for this body is exhausted, and so you die. But now in this lifetime, you don't have the root ignorance. You have no longer ignorance. It's gone. No longer any afflictions, no root misconception. But you have the imprints left, right? The imprints, you remember we used the analogy of what? A vessel with garlic. Our mind is the vessel. Our afflictions are like the garlic cloves that are in there. And when you remove them, there's still some smell left. So you can remove the garlic, but you're still left with the smell. So this wooden vessel, especially a wooden vessel keeps that smell for quite some time. So similarly here, this bodhisattva has removed the afflictions. The garlic is gone, but the tendencies, the propensities are still there. There's still the appearance of inherent existence, although there's no longer any grasping. In the case of anger, they may still speak loudly, they may still seem aggressive, although there's no aversion. And they may be, jumping around like a monkey, Tsongkhapa says. They may be like jumping here and there. There's no longer attachment, but it manifests in certain tendencies that come from the afflictions. Whatever else, so the afflictions are gone, but the tendency that express themselves through speech and body, for instance, in the case of anger and attachment, they can still manifest. Right? Sometimes we meet people that seem so grumpy. We think they're really they're kind of aloof and grumpy, but we think they're really angry. But maybe they have no anger whatsoever. It's just that tendency from the time when they were angry. So at Bodhisattva, we come to that once we study this part of the text. In the text, it also talks about the imprints of anger. When you have no longer anger, but you will still, if you were an angry person before as a Bodhisattva, for instance, or even as a you have strong imprints from anger, at some point, you may still seem like an angry person. Sometimes say things harshly, even with great compassion. I mean, some lamas can be really, for our benefit, be really harsh, right? We don't want the ones who always tell us how great we are. Oh, your ego, Yeah. So, therefore, these tendencies remain. And thus, these tendencies are now used as the first link, together with the wish to have such a body. And then when you die, it's not craving and grasping, because they're gone. It's the wish to be reborn for the benefit of other sentient beings. There's prayer, the aspiration, and there's great compassion. So you have the 12 links, but you replace 4 links, basically. And so it's a very different body, obviously. Yeah. This body does not arise from contaminated karma and afflictions, but from the imprints of the root ignorance and uncontaminated karma. Although far more refined than their coarse counterparts, much more refined, these aggregates remain limited, as they're still the results of the imprints of ignorance grasping at intrinsic existence. Thus, while the coarse Mara of the aggregates is transcended with liberation, the subtle Mara remains until it is completely overcome at the time of full awakening. So even the Bodhisattva still has the subtle Mara of the aggregates. It should be noted that although Bodhisattvas irrevocably eliminate, so irreversibly eliminate for good, the coarse 5 aggregates upon reaching the 8th ground, they're able to assume the subtler type, particularly the mental body, already from the path of seeing onward. So that seems like, what? They only overcome it on the 8th ground, but it doesn't manifest it doesn't manifest from the 1st ground onwards, and the answer is yes. Yeah, so it's still there, but it's not active. So the 5 aggregates, there's still the potential for them to arise, but because of their power and so forth, they can already generate a mental body. There are examples like that. For instance, rebirth in the lower realms. When can you no longer be reborn in the lower realm as a bodhisattva? On what level?
Path of preparation.
Path of preparation. Which of the 4 levels? Path of preparation? Medium. Medium. Which of the 4 is medium? Just to be on the safe side, just say medium. Which one is it? Which one is it?
Second.
Forbearance, the 3rd level. On the 3rd level, right? Forbearance level, you can no longer be reborn in the lower realms. You just can't. But have you irrevocably, it's such a difficult word, irreversibly, irrevocably eliminated rebirth in the lower realms? No, on the path of seeing, that's when you're eliminated. So you can no longer be reborn there, but you totally get rid of it together with the potential on the path of seeing. So it's kind of like the same, almost like you don't notice it. Or like you have bodhisattvas who can no longer get angry. They don't get, at a certain level you no longer get angry. However, you only eliminate anger on a different level. So totally, like the seeds, totally, the potential is totally gone. That's on a different level. So there's a difference. And I guess we could also, I mean, even like when you have certain diseases, right? You no longer experience the symptoms, but the cause of the disease is still there. Right? There are lots of diseases like that, where the cause is still there. Can't think of one right now. I mean, you could have COVID. You could have the COVID, the coronavirus in your body, but you don't show symptoms, for instance. So you haven't overcome the virus yet, but you don't show symptoms. So similarly here, you can have the main cause, it's still there, hasn't irreversibly eliminated, but you're not showing the symptoms. So even from the path of seeing onwards, you have bodhisattvas who can assume or can take on this mental body already from the path of seeing onwards. I mean, when I say the subtler type, I mean in particular the body. The mind is already different. The mind, the mental aggregates already have changed. So of the 5 aggregates, we're here mainly talking about the body, the physical aggregate. That coarse physical aggregate no longer manifests. Yes, please?
What do they can do? What they can do with this mental body?
What can it do? Oh, good question. What can it do?
Yeah.
Benefit other sentient beings, right? You see, it's not what the body can do. It's most important what the mind can do. Because the thing is this. You're a bodhisattva, right? You're this amazing bodhisattva. And you want to control where you're reborn. Because that's one part. Like right now, what do I know? I could be born somewhere in the middle of nowhere where the word Buddha doesn't even exist. Right? I mean, that would be really difficult. That's the danger having coarse aggregates. You just can't control where you're going to be reborn. But in the case of a bodhisattva on that level, they can determine when they're going to be reborn. And there are these lamas, of course, that leave behind messages. For instance, His Holiness the Karmapa, he has left behind a letter that was found after his death, where it said where he was going to be reborn. I mean, try that. My father's name is going to be this, my mother's name. I mean, that is pretty impressive. So the point is you can control that and make sure you're reborn in a place where you can benefit other sentient beings most effectively. So that's, of course, a huge advantage. And then you must have a body in the first place, because if you only have this amazing mind, you can't communicate. People can't see you. So you need a body. And again, like just determining where you're going to be reborn, that definitely, yeah, you have a lot more freedom. In fact, practice is about gaining more freedom, right? In every aspect, to have only pleasant experiences, surely that's definitely a kind of freedom, being not controlled by the afflictions, but also to be of greatest benefit, have the freedom to be of greatest benefit to other sentient beings. And that's when you are able to have such a body. You're much more effectively, can be much more effective when it comes to benefiting others. So consequently, when bodhisattvas who have attained the path of seeing pass away, they take on a mental body that does not arise in dependence on contaminated karma and afflictions, but in reliance on the imprints of the root ignorance and uncontaminated karma. Oops, I'm missing a period, full stop. Okay, so these are the 5 aggregates, the Mara of the 5 aggregates. And only a Buddha's 5 aggregates are not described as Mara. So even the Bodhisattva still has limits. And then there's the Mara of the afflictions, which refers to in general, to the inner obstructions that obscure the minds of sentient beings. So why are we not liberated? Why are we not Buddhas? Simply because the true nature of our mind is obscured. And again, what I said so many times, why do we have Buddha nature? Because we have everything that is necessary to become a Buddha. It's just temporarily obscured. So therefore, the Mara of afflictions in general refers to these obscurations or these obstructions. In their coarse form, they are the afflictive obstructions. Ignorance, attachment, aversion, and the like, together with their seeds, together with their potential to arise, which then give rise to non-virtuous actions and bind sentient beings to samsara. So these are the Mara of these are the Mara of afflictions. Yes, the subtle Mara of the afflictions consists of the cognitive obstructions. So the obstructions to liberation, which refers to the residual imprints left by the root ignorance and the other afflictions. While the coarse maras of the afflictions primarily obstructs liberation from cyclic existence, the subtler ones obscure the attainment of the full omniscience of a Buddha. Bodhisattvas eliminate the former on the 8th ground, and the latter when they attain complete enlightenment. So similar to before, right? coarse aggregates, aggregate of mada of aggregate, subtle aggregate, mada of aggregate. Again, similarly, bodhisattvas only from the 8th ground onwards, they get rid of them. Then when it comes to the mara of afflictions, the coarse type, you get rid of when you become liberated. The case of a bodhisattva also on the 8th ground, and the subtle one when you become a Buddha. So even bodhisattvas on the highest level still have subtle maras. Okay, the mara of death. So it seems like Buddhism talks about death. We should think about it. We should reflect on it. We should, rejoice, enjoy our death. And then it's said to be a mara. Well, excuse me. The mara of death refers to the death experienced by sentient beings. In its coarse form, it's the uncontrolled passing that ordinary beings undergo under the power of contaminated karma and afflictions. I mean, of course we should think of death and prepare for death to lead a more meaningful life. But it's still one of the sufferings, the suffering of death. I mean, you're in the middle of a perfect retreat and everything is going well, and then you die. Right? I mean, you just met your Lama, you found a perfect retreat place, and then, I remember I told you that story many times, my study, it was so difficult for me to learn Tibetan because I didn't know Tibetan when I joined the IBD. So I had to learn to debate and learn Tibetan at the same time. I just did it the wrong way around. I did everything the wrong way around. But when I became a nun, I went to become a meditator. First you study, then you reform, then you meditate. No, I wanted to be like meditator. So I moved up to get a meditation hat, and 2 years later I came down. Not working. And then instead of learning Tibetan fast, I joined the IBD, did debate. I could debate with my classmates, but I couldn't talk to them. And because I was so busy memorizing and learning everything, it took me much longer than anyone else to be able to hold a conversation. So after 2 years, I was finally able to speak Tibetan in such a way that Tibetans, when I talked to them, didn't go like, right? And lost interest. Or I wasn't like, what are they saying? What are they saying? I heard the first 3 words. I don't know what they're talking about now. Should I say yes or no? And you don't want to say it too often. Can you say that again? So I remember when I was finally able to speak Tibetan, I thought, I hope I won't die now. I hope I won't die. I have to do it all over again. And then I studied for so many years. It took 17, 18 years. It took for so long. And then when I was done, I was again thinking, I hope I won't die. I have to do it all over again. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love doing it, but the thought, anyway. And that's what our life is like. You learn finally, whatever you learn as a child, and then you become an adult and you learn more, and then you become really experienced, and then you die and you're a baby again. Do it all over again. Can't eat, you can kind of, you can just drink milk, but you can't eat with fork and knife, have to learn that, can't speak, everything over and over again. Death sucks in that way, right? If we were readily, we continue, we just start off from where we left, we'd be so wise now. All that wisdom we'd have, we could do things better. It's so mean that we forget everything, isn't it? Do you think it's fun to do it all over again?
We don't
Go to high school again? Puberty? No, thank you. No. Right? No. I'm not kidding, actually. I'm not kidding. It's true. Okay, anyway. To make the same mistakes again? Oh, gosh, that's annoying. In its coarse form is the controlled passing that ordinary beings undergo under the power of contaminated karma and afflictions. In its subtler form, it applies to, for instance, bodhisattvas on the 8th ground, who, though free from those causes and no longer subject to coarse death, still undergo a more refined kind that is not yet fully controlled. So there's more control than we have, but it's still not as fully controlled as a Buddha. Like a Buddha can totally die or not die. And I mean, why did the Buddha Shakyamuni die? Well, it was karma of sentient beings. And it was also beneficial for them. It was beneficial for them it was a teaching in itself. Impermanence. Not just subtle impermanence, but death. We're going to die. Even the Buddha is going to die. I mean, the Buddha himself had the power, of course, to stay around. But first of all, there's always two aspects. You know, like you always need two hands to clap. And likewise, for a Buddha to be around, you need the karma of sentient beings. If we don't have the karma to have a Buddha around, the Buddha just won't. And then, of course, death is also a teaching in itself. Therefore, a Buddha has absolute control, has no mara of death. But that kind of uncontrolled passing even exists for a bodhisattva. So that's more refined, but there's a certain lack of freedom. As with the first two maras, the coarse aspect is overcome on the 8th ground, while the subtle is removed only with the attainment of Buddhahood. All right, so those are the first three. And I guess we can all identify, or we can all get a sense, yeah, that's why they're called mara, like obstructive or evil forces, in that they obstruct us from liberation and enlightenment. That's what keeps us from them. I mean, there are some that just do that more obviously. The mara of afflictions, of course, is really the main cause of the other two as well, but still, yeah. Anyway, so the fourth one is called the mara of Devaputra. And why it's called Devaputra, hopefully it becomes clear now. So this refers to the obstructive forces that prevent sentient beings from overcoming the other three maras. In its coarse form, it appears as external beings who hinder practitioners from training in the Dharma. A common example is the celestial deities of the desire realm, such as Gara Wangchu, the ruler, certain celestial, not all of them, is certain celestial beings of those desire realm, such as Gara Wangchu, the ruler of the heaven of controlling others' emanations. So when we talk about celestial beings, of course they're the celestial beings of the form and formless realms. They're different. But of the desire realm, I mean, they have definitely accumulated a lot of virtue to be reborn there. They have definitely experienced a lot of happiness, a lot of bliss and so forth. But that doesn't mean that they don't have envy, for instance, right? Envy is one of them. So they may actually create obstacles to practitioners. Okay, so they're said to be, but the example is Gara Wangchu here. So the Devaputra, the son of the gods, that's really what it means. But basically there are certain celestial beings, but these are just examples. There are other beings. I mean, they're humans, right? You may have friends who don't want you to study practice the Dharma. So when they know you do your practice, they show up and want some coffee or whatever. No, but yeah, maybe even your family doesn't want you to practice and doesn't support it, and I don't know, ask you to do certain things when you're actually in retreat. It's possible, isn't it? Sometimes people out of envy, I mean, your family may not do it out of envy, I don't know. They just think you're on the wrong path or you're wasting your time, but others may actually do so out of envy. So the point is, other people may prevent us from practicing. So therefore, that is going to be the first type of mara, the mara of Devaputra. So Gara Wangchu is just an example here. That's the namesake of this particular mara. But anyway, so this heaven is the highest of the 6 celestial abodes in the desire realm, and its sovereign, the kind of its lord or its sovereign, is said to possess extraordinary powers of perception and influence. With clairvoyance, he is said to observe practitioners on the path and deliberately create obstacles to impede their progress, fearing that their attainment of liberation or Buddhahood would undermine his dominion. Right? So in this world, said to be one of the most powerful beings, the celestial. Okay, we can't communicate, but but other people can, other beings can, within the celestial realms, who's kind of the boss. And so possibly feeling threatened by someone who's attained liberation of Buddhahood, it's said that they obstruct these practitioners. But again, that's just the namesake of this particular type of Mara. But I guess more directly is the harm we receive from others. And remember, in the beginning, I said the acts of Mara that is really difficult if we prevent others from practicing. That is such a huge obstacle to our own practice. If we've ever done that, we don't know. In the past, we may have done that, and we may even have done it in this life. I don't know, we didn't like someone who's practicing. Maybe we're envious, or I don't know, wanted to hang out with them and didn't want them to meditate. I don't know, plenty of examples. But to be careful. On the other hand, of course, to support someone's practice is so virtuous. So it makes sense that the opposite can be quite obstructive. So that is, I believe, the acts of Mara. And just from the context, and I also checked with my teachers, and they felt the same, that it was that, although it doesn't mention in the text. So that's the coarse form. In the subtler form, the Mara of Devaputra does not manifest as an external being, but as latent forces. So the certain forces that we have as part of our mind within the practitioner's continuum. These inner potencies sustain the conditions that support the other three Maras, and therefore remain a powerful obstruction until they're finally overcome with the attainment of complete awakening. So I guess you could say it's the imprints. It's kind of like the imprint. So these are the latent forces. So in other words, the Mara of affliction, the subtle Mara of affliction, and the subtle Mara of Devaputra are the same thing. Because what else would these subtle potencies be that are part of, like keeping us, like just the tendency to party, right? We have a tendency to party. So we give up partying, but we want to party. We really want to party, like I want to meditate, but I also want to party. You can't, yeah. Or like the tendencies of our distractive mind. So then we sit down to meditate, and after 5 minutes, we're like thinking of everything but not our practice. Those are tendency, or basically the imprints. So the tendency, we're so dedicated to the practice, but then these pop up, and suddenly we're distracted, right? The tendency arises. Okay. Bodhisattvas, or the tendency is there, and so they arise in that way. Bodhisattvas overcome the coarse form. Oh yeah, this is a little different to before. By cultivating firm faith in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha through a clear recognition of their qualities. So even though there's this external harm, this external obstruction coming from Gara Wangchu or any other celestial, or our friends, you're not in any way obstructed by it. Once you cultivate very firm faith in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha through a clear recognition of their qualities, such faith arises primarily from meditation on emptiness. That's what the text says. So there's like this incredible faith that you have, that faith in the Dharma that is such that nothing can obstruct you. You're so determined, in other words. So you know the qualities of the Dharma in particular. So even if someone wants to tempt you with partying, you're not going to be tempted. But this is such faith really just arises from primarily meditating on emptiness. According to some commentaries, bodhisattvas of sharp faculties generate this stable faith at the heat level of the path of preparation. Right? Those of sharpest faculties at the heat level of the path of preparation. Those of middling faculties upon entering the path of seeing, and those of weaker faculties only on the 8th bodhisattva ground. So here even there are different levels. There's said to be different levels. It's obvious the different types, of course. Some are of greater faculties, sometimes some less. So when you attain that kind of firm faith in the Buddha, if you're a bodhisattva of sharp faculties, you reach it on the heat level of the path, and so forth. So here it's not on the 8th ground, only for the one of the weakest faculty. As with the other three Maras, the subtle Mara of Devaputra is dispelled solely with the full awakening of Buddhahood. So as with the other 3 maras, the subtler one, you only overcome when you become fully enlightened. Okay. All right. Is this clear? Those maras? So it's actually just talking about the acts of Mara, of course. Here it's talking about accumulating. So again, as before, injuring and disparaging thoughts towards a bodhisattva can create very powerful obscurations that we need to be careful of. But also the acts of Mara here in this context, in particular of the 4 we just went through, preventing others from practicing. So the 4 maras are explained from the point of view of being an obstacle to us, but we can also become an obstacle to others. But the only way we can is in the form of the mara of Devaputra. We're not afflictions, we're not death, we're not aggregates, we're not latent forces, so we can only be those beings, those coarse mara of Devaputra, in other words, beings that prevent others from practicing, right? And that is the karmic obscuration we need to be careful about. And then lastly, abandoning the teachings. You wanted to know about that. So what does it mean to abandon the Dharma, abandoning the teachings? Okay. The 3rd grave karmic obstruction that the Compendium of Sutras identifies as even more difficult to overcome than obtaining a precious human rebirth, developing firm faith in the Dharma, and generating great compassion and bodhicitta, is the karmic obstruction of abandoning the teachings. All right, so this is regarded as extremely serious because it strikes at the very root of the path to liberation and enlightenment. But of course, it does not mean having doubts, questions, or confusion. So that's important. I mean, come on, otherwise we all be like, oh my God, we have doubts, no. Those are just natural aspects of practice. But there's, I guess you could say, a coarser form and a subtler form. So in the coarser form, it refers to adopting a hostile or contemptuous attitude toward the Dharma and actively turning oneself, and even others away from it. And such a stance, such an attitude, or such an activity is usually fueled by arrogance, ignorance, or resentment, right? This hostile. So it's not about saying, oh, the Dharma, it's difficult, I don't understand, and having doubts, questions, and confusion, and not practicing for that. I don't think it's that. It's this intentional kind of abandoning the teaching in such a way, like there's a hostile attitude. But that's just the coarser form, right? It may appear as the firm conviction, it may appear also, that's another form of abandoning, as the firm conviction that the Buddha's teachings as a whole, or even authentic instructions from other Buddhist traditions, are false, harmful, or incapable of leading to liberation or Buddhahood. So, very, very dangerous to say, oh, the Kagyupas, they are like the Kagyu tradition. No, really, right? I mean, saying something about Kagyu practitioners or Nyingma practitioner, that's different. No, but about the teachings themselves. And that exists, for instance, in the Tibetan tradition. Sometimes people, Westerners are very good at that, saying, oh, yeah, the Kagyu doesn't really, or the Gelug doesn't really, and that is really dangerous, that criticism. Really, really dangerous. Or of the Theravada tradition. They're just, they're not really, whatever. Very dangerous. So, we have to be careful. These are the authentic teachings. And I think it becomes obvious by just their practitioners, their highest lamas. I mean, I don't think there's any difference in their qualities. They have just different ways of teaching and different terminology, or the terminology is used differently. But in the end, they prescribe, they teach the path to enlightenment in the same way as the other traditions do as well. And we're lucky to have different ones because they're different people and they need different methods and different teachings. If there was just that one method, that's like there's only broccoli. right? If you don't like broccoli, well, you're starving. No. Anyway, so it may also take the form of verbally rejecting or belittling essential principles such as the Four Noble Truths, the law of karma, or reincarnation. So it's like, yeah, Buddhism is great, but reincarnation sucks, right? I mean, again, with that kind of attitude, and there are plenty of people. I mean, if you say like, okay, I don't really understand it, of course, there's nothing wrong with that, but that kind of like, oh, they just made it up, it's all like, it's just to confuse people, I don't know, like, I mean, again, if you out of this kind of hostile and contemptuous attitude, like, yeah, I'm wondering, like, people, I've asked my teachers about that, like, is it like you have already believed it and then you give it up? Or is this about like in general? And they say in general, they usually say in general. It's like, in general, if you have this hostile, so there are a lot of people, if you think like, oh, Buddhism sucks, I mean, you're abandoning the Dharma. You're moving away from the path to liberation. So in terms of Dharma practice, it's a huge obstacle, obviously. Yeah, that makes sense, doesn't it? It's all saying, like, if you want to practice the Dharma, then one of the main obscurations is, one of the heaviest, is abandoning the Dharma. If you don't like it, yeah, you're not going to practice, so it becomes a huge obstruction, of course. Okay, so for us, as I'm assuming you are interested in Buddhist practice, very important to be careful of this. So not to reject or belittle any essential practices, or of mocking practitioners and discouraging others from following the path. So this is the coarser form. A subtler form of this obstruction, arising mainly from ignorance, is the view that some Buddhist teachings are valid methods for becoming a Buddha, while others are not, while others are obstacles. From this follows the belief that bodhisattvas should train in one method but not another. It can also appear as the assumption that classic scriptures are to be used only for study and debate, while practical instructions are found elsewhere. This is to divide the teachings into two kinds, those meant for learning and those meant for practice. Okay, so first of all, anyway, it becomes clear. Lama Tsongkhapa, however, explains in his great treatise on the stages of the path, volume 1, pages 49 to 54, that all scriptures should be regarded as personal instructions, that all the Buddha's words teach directly or indirectly the methods for becoming a Buddha, and that the teachings are all interrelated. So there's no teaching that doesn't take a practitioner to Buddhahood. Even the teachings of the foundational vehicle, they're the foundation. So when we talk about the Theravada teachings, without the teachings of the Theravada, you can't become a Buddha. There are teachings to become a Buddha. And all other teachings directly, if they're authentic, of course, authentic teachings from the Buddha, they're all meant to be practiced. So it's not like those are to be debated and those are to be, no. All the teachings are meant to be learned, to be reflected, and to be meditated on. Not that we have to do this ourselves. It's not like saying you have to do all the teachings. I can't. But it's just assuming that this is useless, this is just for practice, this is just for learning, or this is a practice only for self-liberation. It's not for those who... No, every teaching that is given is relevant in general for the practice of becoming a Buddha. Okay, so this is beautiful in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path, or Lamrim Chenmo, explains it really clearly. It's just 5 pages, not that much in English. The act of abandoning the teachings is considered so grave because it severs our connection to the path of liberation and full enlightenment. Rejecting a teaching as invalid undermines the very foundation for cultivating virtue. So it undermines the foundation for cultivating virtue, purifying negativities. So very important, cultivating virtue, purifying negativities, and developing wisdom and compassion, thereby closing the door to freedom from suffering. We close the door to freedom from suffering. Moreover, abandoning the Dharma produces heavy karmic obscurations. In Buddhist ethics, it is counted among the gravest negative actions, for it expresses profound disrespect to what is held to be the most precious guide out of samsara and mental obscuration. As a result, it creates powerful obstacles that make reconnecting with the teachings in future lives extremely difficult. Right? So something to be very aware of. Of course, if it's not authentic teachings, that's different. I mean, you can be wrong about thinking, oh, this is not a teaching from the Buddha, but to check first, does it make sense or not? I mean, some teachings, of course, could not be from the Buddha, but I think we're at a time and age where we can pretty reliably say which is a teaching of the Buddha and which one is not. Yeah. Okay. Do you have a question with regard to that? You had a question last time.
It's more a comment. I find it very difficult to find the line because so we want to check the Dharma.
Yes.
We are supposed to check the Dharma
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
Philosophical point of view and
Yeah.
everything.
Right.
But sometimes you read text
Yeah.
and you feel a bit in between. For example, if I read a text and they say, may I not become a woman in my next life?
Okay.
For me, I reject this.
Yeah, yeah.
So sometimes I have the feeling, oh, but maybe I'm rejecting the Dharma.
Ah.
So
Okay.
45% I'm very
Right.
okay, but 5% sometimes I just push it
Ah,
away.
yeah.
And,
That's a good example you're giving. So I'll repeat it. You're saying sometimes it's really difficult to know when do I abandon the Dharma and when is it appropriate what I do. For instance, a teaching that you would reject is a teaching that says we should take rebirth as a woman. We should make prayers to be reborn, not as a woman, sorry. Not
Yes, of course we should say opposite.
the opposite. We should make prayers to not be reborn as a woman. Okay. But here it's also about, are these teachings, do they need to be interpreted or not? So I don't think there's something wrong with that, because of course we know certain teachings need to be interpreted. Maybe the Buddha said it to someone, but in what context? Maybe they kind of saw that in this place women were getting married. They didn't have the freedom to be to be nuns or to practice the Dharma. So in that particular circumstance, because if you see the entire teachings, then you realize the Buddha said, Rikipumo, daughter of the lineage, son of the lineage, or daughter of the lineage, like in the Heart Sutra. Shariputra asked only about the sons of the lineage. And then Avalokiteshvara answers whether male or female, this is how to be practiced. So the Heart Sutra is an example where both male and female are stressed, and so many other sutras. So of course there can be different sections of the teachings that seem contradictory, and in that case we have to really check. So it's not about saying the Buddha didn't teach that. That would be more like an abandoning. Maybe he did teach it, but in a particular context, right? There was a purpose for that. But also, I don't need to practice that. No, I don't need to practice. And nowadays, this is certainly no longer an issue, because nowadays monks and nuns can practice, but men and women can practice. But we need to think back at the time, like just historically. I once went to a conference and I had to write a paper and present a paper on the Buddha and women or something. So I did some research on that, and I found out that before the Buddha, was born in India, so probably 1,000 years before that, women had a lot of freedoms. It was like an incredible time for women. And then I don't know whether it's called the Brahmanistic kind of tradition came in, and women suddenly, they lost their freedom, the kind of freedom they had previously. So they were now the possession, or they were under their fathers, and then their brothers, and then their husbands. And everyone wanted to, sons and not daughters. And they had to leave their home to be married, and they could not return, and so forth. So therefore, when the Buddha came and started a women's club, women only, that was the first community at that time of women only governing themselves without a father or a husband or a brother taking care of them. And that's why the Buddha made it also like he told the women, think about it. So it's like when it says the Buddha said he didn't want to ordain women. I don't think he didn't want to ordain women. I think he was more like, think about it. Your situation is much more difficult than that of the men. If you leave your home, you can't go back. And this is still like that nowadays. So a monk who like a man who becomes a monk and then decides to disrobe, they can always go home, right? Take over the family home or become part of it, get a wife and get a woman? No, even to this day, in certain parts of Indian society, once you get married and you have trouble with your husband and you get divorced, your family will not accept you back. You have to stay with that person or just try to, make do on your own, which is really tough in some areas. So similarly, I believe when the Buddha said, oh, I don't want to ordain, he wasn't saying I don't want to, it's just the time wasn't ripe in that women needed to be even more determined to do so that they knew they didn't end up homeless, having disrobed or whatever. I think there's a very good reason. It has to be put into perspective. Yeah. So in the end, it's just about taking authentic teachings, understanding, having a broad understanding. The Buddha did say men or women can become. So if there's this idea of women, okay, so maybe in that context, it was maybe necessary for that person. We don't know whether the Buddha taught it, but let's assume he did. But he said it to a specific person. He didn't say in general, right? So therefore, that's not abandoning the teachings. I don't think so. No. And to keep an open mind. I know, I don't know. If you just say, I don't know, but for me that doesn't work, perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Right. I mean, there's lots of it. But like saying, that's just rubbish. That's the problem, because we don't know. Yeah.
Sometimes in Rise, we feel like when I read some stuff we do now, for me it's not logical, for example, because I challenge everything.
Right.
So 95% of the Dharma is so logical for me. And I follow completely, give my life to it. Sometimes I read stuff and I'm like, it doesn't work, and I have this thing of like, oh, maybe it's historical context, maybe there is a mistake.
Yeah, that's good. That's okay. Maybe. I mean, at least allow for doubt. So, okay, I wonder why that is in there. Could that be a printing error? Could it be the person made a mistake? Yeah, and so forth, right? That's the right attitude. Not like this, that's rubbish. So here the Buddha said something that really doesn't make sense. That's not the right attitude. Yeah, but having doubt is totally fine. Yeah. Yes.
About, say, for some people in the Theravada tradition, you might say that the Mahayana teachings are not those of the Buddha. Is it natural non-virtue, regardless of your perspective?
Oh, that's a nasty question. So Aiden asks, some people in the Theravada tradition would say that the Mahayana teachings were not taught by the Buddha. Are they therefore abandoning the Dharma? Yes. I would say so. Unless you disagree. I mean, like, it was not taught by the Buddha. For whatever reason they say so. Yeah. I mean, if I were to say the Theravada teachings were not taught by the Buddha, would I abandon the Dharma? What do you think?
Yes.
Okay. So how about the other way around? So
it's easier to prove that the Pali tradition is.
How do you easily prove that? How do you even know the Buddha taught it?
I'm not saying. I mean, there's lots of things that. I forget the technical term of people that study that sort of thing, right? But there are ways of.
But what are these ways? You see, I know what you're saying. You're right. It seems easier to prove that the Theravada was taught by the Buddha. But we don't know. In the end, I mean, there's always room for doubt. We don't know because, well, even if we were there, we no longer remember. Of course, you're saying that, yes, it was mainstream. The Theravada teachings became a mainstream teachings right away. And you could trace it back to the Buddha. It was much easier to do so, while it wasn't with the teachings of the universal vehicle. I totally agree. But you see, first you need to learn about them, right? To say like, oh, it was not taught by the Buddha. I think there's also a different way to go about it. Saying, I don't know, I have my doubts, that's different. But just saying categorically, no, it wasn't taught by the Buddha, like no way, just because they became a mainstream teachings only later on. Well, no, I think that would be abandoning the teaching. So I think we need to distinguish here. And I know a lot of people from the Theravada tradition, they're open, they want to, learn about this, and they're kind of open to it. And kind of like you can also distinguish, like saying the Buddha didn't teach it in the form of Buddha Shakyamuni. Like especially the tantric teachings in the form of Buddha Shakyamuni. Sometimes he appeared as tantric deities and it came later on through visions. So it wasn't, he may have taught it later on, for instance, through visions, for example. So that's okay, saying that. They did come from the Buddha, but just not in the way the Theravada teachings came. That's okay. But I think it's always about an openness and leaving some room for doubt, because only because it seems that way doesn't make it true. Remember, I always use that example. Remember the example I give? Was it Wittgenstein or who was the philosopher? I forget. I always forget what he was called. Was it Wittgenstein? When he said, like, to one of his disciples, there was a philosopher, a Western philosopher, wasn't he Austrian? Wittgenstein, I thought it was Wittgenstein. What was it? Yeah, Wittgenstein, yeah, that's him. Yeah, there was Wittgenstein, Ludwig Wittgenstein. The story goes, oh, here it is. Tell me, Wittgenstein asked a friend, why do people always say it was natural for man to assume that the sun went around the earth rather than the other way around? Okay, I can't open this. Oh yeah. So tell me, why do people always say it was natural for man to assume that the sun went around the earth rather than that the earth was rotating, right? It seems, why do people assume? And his friend replied, well, obviously, because it just looks as though the sun is going around the earth. So people assume not that the earth is rotating, but that the sun revolves around the earth. And then Wittgenstein say, well, what would it have looked like if it had looked as though the earth was rotating? What would it would look the same, right? What would it look like if it looked as if the earth itself was rotating? It would still look like the sun would, so it would still look the same way. So we cannot conclude that something appears. I mean, the Buddha's teachings appeared later on, right? I mean, the Mahayana teachings, the teachings of the universal vehicle were in the beginning not taught openly, but more in secret, until people's minds were ready, so it became a mainstream teaching. So that is why they appeared later. Therefore, we just assume they weren't taught earlier because they didn't appear earlier, but that does not exclude the possibility that they were taught in secret first. So how can you conclude just because they didn't? It's like it's the same with the sun, right? Oh, the sun must be revolving around the earth because it looks like that more than it looks like the earth was rotating around itself. But we still don't conclude that, right? So I think that's a really powerful argument for saying, at least keep an open mind. Keep the possibility open. Listen to what the teachings are all about. Take a look at the great lamas. I mean, are they that different from many of the great Theravada lamas? Right? And only then you can really tell, I believe. Yeah. So that openness, I think, is important. Not to categorically say, oh, no, because then, yeah. You see? So I think if you have that attitude, yeah, that's a danger. But I think great practitioners of the Theravada, they wouldn't do that. I don't think they would categorically do it. Maybe if they're new to the teachings and so forth, but I don't think the great practitioners would really think that. I don't know.
I say because I have one friend, good, very old, good Buddhist friend who's in the Theravada tradition, and he says things of that sort.
Oh, he says,
Yeah.
so you have an old friend of the Theravada tradition, so okay, he says those things. Yeah, I'm afraid. Yeah. But I could be wrong.
Yeah.
It's better to be careful about that one.
Yeah, I argue back like you have said, I suggest
Yeah,
those kind
yeah.
of things, right? We don't know, whatever, but
Yeah. And so,
because it's not even in their teachings to say
yeah,
abandon the Dharma, as far as I know,
yes,
it's not in the Theravada teachings, right? It's not listed as this great
right.
thing, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's a difficult one. It's not easy. Yeah, it's really difficult. And again, I really don't know, but I cannot, I mean, I assume, honestly, I don't know 100%, but I believe if someone says, yes, the Buddha's teaching, the Buddha didn't teach this, that this is part of abandoning the Dharma. Yeah. I mean, you're closing the door to the universal vehicle, to the path to Buddhahood, obviously. Yeah, with that assumption. Ludwig Wittgenstein, yeah. Okay, great. Oh, yes, please. Yes, in the chat. Oh, yeah, that's right. I've seen one Bernd ask a question quite a while ago, and there are a few more. He asked a question about, he says that with the idea of cleansing or purifying negative karma, I'm currently wondering what would happen if I would have actually managed to clear all negative karma, but I was to go back to a region where a war is considered to break out soon. Would that prevent a war, as I have no negative karma for it? Or could there be a positive karma to experience war as a challenge and teacher? Oh, these very specific questions on karma are very difficult. Or would I simply not be able to go there, either lacking the idea of doing so or circumstances preventing it? Is it even possible to be that free of negative karma, or does cleansing karma or purifying karma mean something different? After all, on the path of seeing any karma still existing would be experienced as empty and being only related to a projected I that does not exist. Okay. All right. But that doesn't mean, even if it's empty of inherent existence, it doesn't mean it still exists. So it's definitely existent. Can you purify karma totally? Yes, you can. And I don't know, there could be different options that you, yeah, like, I mean, yourself, if you don't have the karma for a war to break out, but everyone else has, I'm afraid your karma is not going to prevent. I mean, it depends on if the karma ripens. If the karma ripens, right, and the war breaks out, your karma won't prevent that war. But as you suggested, it's possible that he doesn't experience it, has no suffering in that time. I mean, at that time. Look at COVID. Like some people suffered terribly, and other people became richer than before and loved it. Right? I mean, you can't say that some, I don't know, the person who came up with Zoom certainly has got more money. And so on. And anyway, some people just really enjoyed it and didn't have a hard time. I enjoyed it. I didn't have to go to family stuff, I could just stay at home and no one complained. Because when I'm in Germany, I have to meet like my uncle and my aunts and stuff, and I try to avoid as much as I can. And I didn't have to do it. I could just be on my own and no one complained. So that part I enjoyed. Of course, there was the worry about disease, like my parents and so forth. But okay. Anyway, I can't say. Or you just can't go there in the first place. That's also a possibility. Yeah. So just a bit confused about that now. Well, the thing is, that is subtle karma. That's a subtle working of karma. Of course it's confusing. But I can ask you a question. If you have a seed and you plant it and a sprout grows, will it grow to the right, to the left, or up? I'm a little confused, right? Of course, this is so subtle, we don't know. One of these two is going to happen. But even when we talk about ordinary cause and effect, that is not, I mean, like, karma is one type of cause and effect. It relates to volitional actions and their experiences, their mental experiences, mainly mental experiences. But then, of course, there's cause and effect when you talk about sprouts and seeds and so forth. And there's a very subtle level. What is going to happen with this seed? What is the sprout going to look like? If you've got two seeds, will they look the same? Will one grow to the right, one to the left? Just as difficult, isn't it? So similarly with karma, only a Buddha understands it. Only a Buddha fully understands it. So in the end, the good thing is, as long as you purify as much karma as you can, and prevent the accumulation of karma for war, you're not experiencing it the same way as someone who has accumulated that kind of karma. Okay. All right, then Sarah says, actually my understanding from the teaching, there was something else about the pure realm. If one is born in the pure realm, is there a possibility to be reborn in samsara at some point? No. As in that's Venerable Yangdun. Yeah, last time, sorry, I was too late. I didn't see that message. The class was already over. But then, Sarah says, yes, my understanding from the teaching was no. Once you're in the Pure Land, you don't go back to samsara. And then someone else gives the second part to this answer, which is totally right, which is saying you can, Kim, I think she said, unless you want to go there. No, who said it? Yeah, anyway, so apparently once you're reborn there, you can no longer be reborn through the power of karma and afflictions in samsara, but you can choose to go there to benefit sentient beings as a bodhisattva. So that's the difference. Okay, so Georgina says, yes, you get the teachings, then you're able to go back to samsara. Oh yeah, that's Georgina, yes. She says, you can get the teachings, and then you're able to go back to samsara as a bodhisattva. So you intentionally go there, and not through the power of karma and afflictions, but through the power of through the power of prayer and great compassion to benefit others, not for the benefit only others. Otherwise, entering the Pure Land is not for the benefit of others, only oneself. Yeah, you do want to be reborn in the Pure Realm. You do have to generate the wish. You don't need to have bodhicitta to be reborn in the Pure Realm, but you should have the motivation to do it for the benefit of all sentient beings. That should be part of it. So I had at least one teaching that although it's for a long time, eventually our karma exhausts, and even gods pass out of a Pure Land. Yeah, that's so here there's a difference between the celestial realm of samsara, and that's what I think Band also said, yes. So yeah, that's true. As an ordinary celestial being, you can fall from that, but in the pure realm, that's different. You accumulate so much virtue, you don't run out. Right? In the pure realm, in the celestial realm, you accumulate, all the virtue can be exhausted because you're just enjoying, you're just using it up, but you're not necessarily replenishing it. Whereas in the pure realm, you do. Okay. And then, does anyone know where we are in the physical book? Oh, the physical book. We're on page 60 of this document. Oh, okay. So that's this document. I mean the actual book, illuminating the intent, because I'm kind of explaining a lot here that I don't know whether you studied all this, so the four maras and everything, so I'm including this. But Lama Tsongkhapa, of course, just mentions it briefly, but I don't have the page numbers. So I don't know, in the physical book, it's still in the beginning. Okay. So on page 60 of this handout, as the Geshe in the library once mentioned, that Buddha Shakyamuni never said that somebody in a female body in such a specific incarnation cannot reach enlightenment, but that it was Guru Rinpoche who said that the last body before enlightenment needs to be a male body. I mean, I don't doubt that the Geshe in the library said that, but I believe, if you practice, Vajrayogini, for instance, you enlighten in the form of Vajrayogini as one of the profound highest yoga tantric practices. So why would you have to be, right? I mean, it depends. You see, I think there's a difference if you have a very strong karmic connection to Yamantaka, who's a male Buddha figure or meditative deity. Then if it's your karma, if you have accumulated the causes and conditions to attain enlightenment through this practice, you better be a man, possibly, I suppose. I don't even know that, but maybe the male body is more it's more beneficial as the last body. But even I don't know. I don't think so. I think it doesn't matter. It's more about the kind of energy winds in your body, the way they are, the constitution, the structure of your energy channels and so forth, which practice is best for you. But I think it doesn't matter whether you're male or female. I don't know. Yeah, anyway, it's good to keep it open. Okay, Geshe-la, the point about the context of the, so Banu says, the point about the context of the person to whom the teaching was given seems to me to be contradictory to the point that each of Buddha's teachings should be taken as personal instructions, with ideas like reincarnation or beings of the different... Oh, that's the first question. The context of the person to whom the teaching was given seems to me contradictory. Yes, the point about the context of the person to whom the teaching was given. Ah, okay, so all right, now I get it. With the rebirth of a female, right? It seems to be contradictory. She's got a good point here. First I say every teaching of the Buddha should be taken as a personal instruction. And then again I'm saying, but no, you need to see it in context. But I think there is a way in which this is not contradictory. A personal instruction in the sense, well, practice further, get better understanding of what the Buddha said. So part of our practice is also to learn the Dharma, right? It's not like the learning is not part of the practice, but to get a better understanding of the full teachings of the Buddha. So if we listen to that, it doesn't mean we literally now have to sit down and make prayers to be reborn as a man, but to check, like, what could this be teaching me? It could be teaching me that what would be a good rebirth I should wish for in the next life. So in certain circumstances, it may be to have a male body. In certain circumstances, it may be better to have a female body. So what is my situation right now? What should I make prayers for in the future? Right? Which country would be most conducive? Would it be more conducive to be reborn in Asia, in Tibetan society, where I have access to the teachings right from the beginning? I don't have to struggle through the language and so forth. So I would take this as a personal instruction in the sense that, okay, I know for me at this point in time, I don't need to be born male. But it's important to make certain aspirational prayers. That's what the Buddha himself encouraged me to do. What should I pray for? Don't wait until it's 5 minutes before death to start aspirational prayers. Start now, right? Prepare for death. Yeah? If you want to be reborn in the pure realm, start making prayers. Yeah? When you do certain practices, it talks about, for instance, being reborn in Shambhala. Yeah? So you replace it with the pure realm you want to go to. Okay? So those of you who do the practice will probably know, right? There's a particular where it says, may I be reborn in Shambhala. No, not Shambhala, Shangri-La. Shambhala, sorry, it is Shambhala. May I be reborn in Shambhala. So then you replace it with, Amitabha, Sukhavati, or Abhirati. So you're making prayers. You see? So I'm seeing that as an instruction in that way. With ideas like reincarnation or beings of the different realms, is it non-virtuous to have differing ideas on whether these are to be taken literally or interpreted as metaphors? Is it virtuous to have differing ideas on? I think it's okay to interpret them and believe, maybe they can be metaphors. That's not necessarily, like Avalokiteshvara is just symbolic. But to keep an open mind, it's more about like, it's like that, I know, and kind of rejecting it. To take it as a possibility, I think that's fine. I mean, of course, what can we do? We don't know. So it could be this, it could be that. But to keep an open mind is probably not a bad idea. Oh, with the different realms of saying, now I understand. So with the different realms, like saying, it's really difficult for me to think of the other realms. But you see, the thing is that the same with reincarnation. If you have a hard time with reincarnation, don't just reject it and say it's not there. I don't think so. It's all doesn't make sense. Or the existence of other realms. So again, don't categorically reject it. Keep an open mind, and maybe there are, maybe they aren't. But for now, it's more beneficial for me to see it as metaphorical, kind of like, human hell on earth kind of idea, right? So there are hellish states on earth in human realms and so forth. Yeah, that's totally fine. Why does the liberation in the palm of your hand said, Kelvin says, why does liberation in the palm of your hand said that it's extremely difficult? That's a text by Pamongka Rinpoche. There's a text that's called Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand. So knowing how to distinguish between Buddhism and non-Buddhism is actually extremely difficult. Perhaps the following will give you some idea. Atisha once said, in India only 3 people knew how to distinguish between Buddhism and non-Buddhism. Naropa, Shantipa, and myself. Naropa is dead and have gone to Tibet. When has India been in a worse position? Oh, that's what Atisha said. To distinguish between authentic... So why does it's extremely difficult to distinguish between authentic teachings and from non-authentic teachings? Wow. Because the Buddhist teachings are so difficult, right? I mean, on their deepest level, have we not fallen into the extreme of nihilism or reification, for instance? So it's very difficult to really understand, for instance, emptiness. And the moment you fall into the extreme of reification, then that becomes a non-authentic teaching. Or you fall into the extreme of nihilism, becomes a non-authentic teaching. So on the sattva's level, it's really difficult. Unless you totally understand Buddhism in all its details, if you still have doubt, it's very difficult. Is that right? Or is it, you have your own version of karma. That may accord with some non-Buddhist teachings and not really the Buddhist teachings. Right? Especially, with emptiness, I think it's so hard to find the middle, merely labeled, yet lacking inherent existence. So to make both work, that both are not seen as a contradiction, but as complementary, as Lama Tsongkhapa says in the 3 principal aspects of the path. It's not enough to understand that phenomena lack inherent existence, that they're not findable, but you must be able to also bring in dependent arising and not see it as a contradiction, but as complementary. That is so difficult, right? When we think of dependent arising, our dependent arising seems to exist inherently. And when we talk about not being able to can't find anything, there's nothing there. So dependent arising becomes difficult. So to really get it right, really get the middle way between these 2 extremes is very hard. And the moment we fall into one of the 2 extremes, then we're more falling towards a non-authentic teaching, our own version of a non-authentic teaching, right? So that's why I think it's difficult. But on a coarser level, of course, we may be able to, on a coarser level, to distinguish, but on the subtler level, it's really difficult. It's really just someone who's a Buddha or has a complete understanding. I think only a Buddha. No. If you have no longer any wrong views, I guess you could say, so on the 8th ground of a Bodhisattva, especially for a Bodhisattva, but I don't know from what level onwards you no longer have that difficulty. I don't know, but definitely a Buddha doesn't have that difficulty. Oh gosh, no, it's okay. Just to add my 2 cents, there's 21 Taras without counting all other female Buddhas like Ushnisha Vijaya, Bandilhamu, the 5 female Buddhas, the consorts of almost all highest yoga-tantric deities, Vajrayogini Chittamani Tara, and one of the stories of how Arya Tara attained enlightenment goes against this patriarchal idea of only man that is straight and able-bodied being able to attain enlightenment. I think it's important to recognize that sadly women have been ignored as teachers and practitioners for hundreds if not thousands of years in Buddhism, hence almost all teachers in refuge trees being men, and of course that will also show in some teachings. Yeah, it's true. Especially in India when Buddhism first developed, it was a very patriarchal society. And also in Tibet, of course, and only recently things have changed, even all over the world have changed. Yeah, so it's always been that way. I agree. Yeah, I agree. It is what it is. True. And then I know Jetsun Matenzen Pamo, she says she's made a prayer to only be reborn as a woman. Right? Very good. Amazing. And you know, sometimes they say, or not sometimes, they say in general, the more difficulties you face, the greater your progress. That's why being born in these degenerate times, not talking about male and female, of course there's also differences. And of course in some existence, if you have a certain male, in some existences being a male could be really difficult. I mean, it's not always, but in general women have a harder time. But they say in these degenerate times it's much more difficult to practice, but it's much more rewarding. If you really practice sincerity, you progress much faster than you would at the time of the Buddha. So that should be encouraging, that despite the difficulty. But there's still room for improvement in terms of having more female examples in the refuge tree. Yeah. But then, honestly, when you think of your Lama, I don't think of His Holiness, I mean, at some point, it's like His Holiness a man or woman. It's kind of like, because they don't behave like a typical man, like they have both. So the male and female are kind of combined in them. So it's, I mean, Lama Zopa Rinpoche was also like, it's both. So you don't see them in that very strict way, I think. Lama Zopa Rinpoche mantra to purify, avoiding the whole. Oh, that's beautiful. So Christine, she posted this mantra that if you've accumulated abandoning the Dharma, you can purify. By Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you have this particular mantra here. Okay, great. Thank you for your
It's too late, I think.
maybe let's leave it for next time, or you post it. Is that okay?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, because it's and I really 2 hours is quite long.
Yeah.
It is quite long. I mean, if people say it's too long, I'm always happy to cut it. No, it's fine. Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to go down with the time, but yeah. Anyway, all right. Let's of course make sure we don't waste any of the positive potential we've accumulated today, either through getting angry or through the positive potential ripening in a useless way. So to dedicate may all become a cause for us to attain the fully enlightened state of a Buddha. And for that, may of course our great lamas, our great examples who embody the teachings, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all the other great embodiments of the Buddha Dharma, have a long and healthy life. So in that way, let's recite the prayer with that motivation. In the snow-encircled land, you are the source of benefit and bliss. Avalokiteshvara Denzin Gyatso, please remain in life until samsara ends. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. May the precious view of emptiness, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore. Thank you.